Chapter 11. Abby bit her lip as she drove down the highway, trying not to start crying again. Zoran had been very reluctant to let her go. After he came back to the workshop last night, he helped her finish packing her creation. It took both of them to get it into her truck. She hoped whoever came to pick her up wouldn't mind helping her load it on the jet. Afterward, they walked back to the cabin, where Abby fixed them a light meal. After dinner, they sat outside talking about Abby's clients and how far New York was from California. Zoran hadn't said anything, but Abby could tell he wasn't pleased. Unable to deal with his disapproval of her leaving, she kissed him, the fire of desire burning in her blood. They spent most of the night making love before Abby fell into an exhausted sleep not long before daybreak. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Abby finally noticed the mark on her neck in the shape of a dragon, but didn't say anything to Zoran. Even now, as she drove down the highway, she lightly traced the pattern with her fingers. It looked like a combination of a tattoo and a birthmark. All she cared about was that it was a piece of Zoran. It marked her as his and his dragon's, and no one could ever take that away from her. Abby pulled into the airport parking lot. The terminal was just a single one-story building, not much bigger than her workshop. Mrs. Patterson's husband, Harry, was the lone airport personnel, and he did that as a volunteer. He was a retired Air Force pilot and traffic controller. Abby liked the way he used to come up to the mountain to talk with her grandfather, especially after her grandmother died. "Morning, Abby. I just got a call that your ride will be landing in the next 15 minutes. Need any help with your crate?" Harry said gruffly. Abby smiled. "Morning, Harry. If you don't mind holding the hand truck steady while I slide it down, I would appreciate it. I have this thing packed so tight I could probably airdrop it down the Boswell's chimney and it would be fine." Harry laughed in response. They spent the next 20 minutes talking about different things while they waited for the jet to finish taxiing. Abby was surprised when two women climbed down from the jet. "Good morning. I'm Tricia Grove, and this is my co-pilot, Ariel Ham. We are to assist you in any way you need and escort you to the Boswell's home in New York." Abby looked at the two women. Both were dressed in black, form-fitting uniforms that flattered their figures. She had never seen a plane like the one they were flying. The jet had a slick design, and Abby could tell it was made for speed. "Hi, I'm Abby Tanner. Thank you for coming all this way to get me. I can't believe the Boswells are flying me all the way to New York just to deliver this." Ariel laughed. "They spare no expense. Plus, this is a write-off. This is a new design for business jets, and we get to test it. Both of us were Air Force test pilots, so this is one of the perks of the job. The jet is very safe and handles like a dream. They just wanted to test fuel efficiency and speed cross-country. We were happy to volunteer for the trip." Harry's eyes lit up when Ariel mentioned their Air Force connection. A half-hour later, both women were promising to give Harry an update on their flight when they returned Abby early the next day. The Boswells planned a reception for Abby's new creation and wanted her to stay the night for their dinner party. Abby was reluctant, but knew it would be pointless to protest since the Boswells' connection could mean more contracts for work. The flight to New York was uneventful. They made a brief stop in Nevada to refuel since Shelby didn't have the jet fuel they needed. After their brief stop, Abby leaned back in her seat, staring down at the passing landscape. She already missed Zoran so much she hurt. She could feel her dragon mark burning as if it were protesting her being so far from him. She absent-mindedly rubbed it gently with her fingers. Leaning her head back, she smiled down at the two gold symbiotics on her wrists. They were weaving into different designs, like they were trying to make her feel better. They both turned into the shape of a dog chasing each other. Abby giggled as she watched them running around her lap. Her eyes widened with wonder as both suddenly took the shape of little dragons and began flying around. She watched as they chased and played with each other for almost an hour before settling back down onto her wrists with a warm, contented feeling. She raised each one to her mouth, gently pressing a kiss on them. Abby fought back tears at the idea of them leaving her when Zoran left tomorrow. She knew they couldn't survive without being near him and the mother symbiote. She felt a single tear track down her face at the thought of losing him. She didn't know if she would survive it. Closing her eyes, she drifted off to sleep as exhaustion swept through her. Zoran paced back and forth in frustration. He was going out of his mind without Abby near. It took every ounce of willpower he had to let her go this morning. His dragon roared and clawed at him in fury. He had to get out of the cabin. Her presence and scent were everywhere. The sheets still held the scent of their lovemaking, making him ache to hold her. He strode up the path to the meadow and his ship. Maybe if he focused on what was happening back home and with the plans to attack the Curizans, he would be able to take his mind off Abby for a little while. He ran his hand over his golden ship, murmuring soothing words as he walked inside. The ship shuddered at the knowledge it would soon be able to transform into another shape. It missed the freedom of Valdier. "Soon, my friend. Soon you will be able to roam free," Zoran said as he sat down. Calling up the view screen, he turned to his brother Trelon. "Trelon, how goes it?" Zoran asked grimly. "Well, we are within orbit of the planet. There are a number of satellites we have to redirect so their signals do not recognize anything out of the ordinary. The inhabitants of this world clutter their airspace with a lot of junk. It is almost amusing to see how primitive they are. It is as bad as being on the Hunt planet without the city complex," Trelon said, with a glimmer of amusement on his face. He loved anything to do with old space junk. He collected it just to take it apart and see what it was used for. "I've been monitoring their communications. They have many entertaining programs. Did you know there was a group of people shipwrecked on an island? And this yellow thing lives on the bottom of their ocean and cooks on a grill. How can a grill work under the water?" Trelon continued, looking puzzled. Zoran gave Trelon a frustrated look. "Have you heard from Creon lately?" "He is being very secretive, but you know Creon, he is always that way. He doesn't want to say anything until we join him back home," Trelon replied. He hesitated before continuing. "Zoran, can I ask you something personal?" Zoran looked up, distracted. He was trying to reach out to the symbiot on Abby, but she was too far away. "Yes?" "Is it true you were able to complete the mating? I mean, a true mate with the female from this planet?" Trelon asked quietly, for once totally serious. Zoran sighed. He knew many would be interested in his mating with Abby. The sign of the dragon's mark on her neck would show she had mated with both him and his dragon. The sight of his symbiot on her would show she was totally accepted as his true mate. This was something all males craved, as it meant total satisfaction on both the physical and mental level. He had found his other half. He was finally whole. "Yes, I have found my true mate. Abby not only accepted my symbiot, but also me and my dragon," Zoran replied. "Is it true what they say about the dragon's heat? That it is truly an incredible experience to finally be sated?" Trelon asked tentatively. Zoran's eyes flashed for a moment before he realized his brother was not asking for details. He just wanted to know if everything they had ever heard as they grew up about the dragon's heat was true. That for once, the constant ache, the constant hunger was finally sated. The nagging discomfort was something they all accepted they would always feel until their deaths. "Yes, while I ache and hunger for Abby, it is not the same. I miss her on a physical and mental level, something I have never felt before. But the steady ache and hunger that clawed at my insides is no longer there. Only with her do I feel complete," Zoran said, looking at his brother with tears in his eyes. "I love her, Trelon, both as a man and as a dragon." Trelon smiled sadly. "I am happy for you, brother. I can only hope one day the rest of us can find a true mate like yours." They spent the next several hours talking about life back home. The other diplomats were furious over Zoran's capture and had voted on an embargo of Curizan until the forces responsible for his capture were brought to justice. The city complex on the Hunt planet also received a warning that such an event would not be tolerated, and it would be fined for not maintaining security as it promised. A new commander of the city complex was installed, and a full investigation was underway to find out what happened. Abby sighed with relief as the last guest for the evening left. The Boswells did everything big. There had to have been over 100 guests, all incredibly rich. Her piece was placed in the Boswells' private gallery, and Abby received numerous compliments, a few a little more personal than she liked, and a couple of promising prospects for additional work. She didn't push anything, since she was just too sad and tired to do so. All she wanted to do was get back on the plane and head back to California. Unfortunately, it would be early tomorrow morning before she could leave. Mr. Boswell explained they were waiting for a mechanic to show up from one of their facilities to accompany the flight back. Some of his managers wanted to have the pilots test a few things, and the mechanic was supposed to test the engine afterward. There would also be another passenger, but Mr. Boswell didn't say more than that. Abby didn't really care, as long as they left as soon as possible. She missed Zoran, and tomorrow might be her last day with him.